Thanks so much for being here. I would be so honored if I could do a song with you. Would that be all right?
Well, I think that'd be great.
Okay, good. We'll probably do this for the internet, unless something terrible happens and we have to cheer up the world on the TV show. All right? All right, let's give it a try. I wouldn't mind doing That's the Way the World Goes Round.
I know that one.
All right, you should.
I know a guy that's got a lot to lose. He's a pretty nice fella, kinda confused, got muscles in his head, ain't never been used. Thinks he owns half of this town. Started drinking heavy, got a big red nose, beat his old lady with a rubber hose. Then he took her out to dinner, bought her new clothes. It's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round. You up one day, the next you down. It's a half an inch of water and you think you're gonna drown. That's the way that the world goes round.
I was sitting in the bathtub, counting my toes when the radiator broke. Water all froze, I was stuck in the ice without any clothes, naked as the eyes of a clown. I was crying ice cubes, hoping I'd croak. When the sun come in the window, I saw broke. I stood up and laughed, I thought it was a joke. That's the way that the world goes round.
That's the way that the world goes round. You up one day, the next you down. It's a half an inch of water, you think you're gonna drown. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes round. That's the way that the world goes around. I think we did it. That's the way the world goes around.
Thank you, John. John Farnham, everybody.
Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. Thank you. Please stand by. You are being placed into conference in listen-only mode. There are 9 participants in the conference.
Well, no, it should be like in the.
I didn't. I didn't see like the memo or anything.
Let me see if I can find it. Well, because we're not supposed to be reviewing them at all, so we don't have anything to say about them officially. So.
Officially, yeah. I'm glad unofficially you caught it.
Yeah, one of our examiners was like,
a lot of data this thing. A lot of information. Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Subway number. We don't do election April. A lot of them are good folks, so yeah. I do that in election. Girl Scouts.
Okay, maybe I should include it. Because I wasn't able to. Let me see if she's got that, right?
Go get security. He's slipping this morning.
Just so everyone knows, alcohol and marijuana control don't have a problem with people eating in their meetings, but this room is a room where they request that we not have food in the room. So.
I wasn't sure. You can eat out there, but it's not in your room. I appreciate it. The carpet cleaning more than anything. They got on us yesterday. You probably maybe I was drinking. Surprised they haven't. Like very nice 30 seconds. I told her I didn't have to to watch my shop. One over there. This is a beautiful room. They do a thing. Cabaret and stuff. They set up a piano and stuff like that. And they do like I don't know, Sunday afternoon. Oh, okay. The one that you already. All right, thanks.
Oh, okay.
I thought I saw it, right? Yeah.
We appreciate everyone's timely attendance. We will start as soon as we have a board quorum.
invigorating. Complained about the apparently the state maintained icy sidewalks yesterday. Yep. Today I brought it all in with me. Hey.
Yeah, do you guys plow the sidewalk here, Lauren?
State, man.
Yeah, I got
Up the second floor today.
sidewalks are.
Second floor, all right, are we up there? Good morning, everybody from, not sunny Juneau. This is your waterlogged Chairman Mark Springer. It's 9:07. And we're calling the second day of the Marijuana Control Board to order here in the State Library in Juneau. So, Mike Cole. I keep wanting to say it like that. Do we have roll call, please?
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Emmett?
Here.
Mr. Springer?
Here.
Ms. McConnell? Here. Ms. Milk? Here. And I am... And the chair, Jaime, is excused.
All righty, that's fine. So we are at regulations. So, while my computer is turning on, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, if we could just remind everybody who's on the phone to put your phones on mute, so that when the board does need to talk to someone on the phone, they can hear clearly and everyone else can hear clearly.
Yes, please.
So, excuse me. There are a number of staff recommendations for new regulations projects. Several of these were brought to the board at the last meeting, but we ran out of time before we could address them. So it was noted during the discussion about on-site consumption at the last meeting that there might need to be some additional changes. Mr. Jones had spoken about how what happens when there's a licensee in an area that has no local government, and how that section of regulation wasn't amended to address the issue of on-site consumption. There's also an issue with the definition of licensed premises in that it implies it's entirely indoors. So changing the definition to accommodate an outdoor consumption area is advisable. And I added in my memo to review other changes needed that may relate to enforcement, which were also some things that Mr. Jones spoke about. But I was able to make some changes in the fine schedule within the next tab, so that may accommodate those issues. So that's a little, and then the other issue yesterday, whereas that the on-site consumption regs as written imply that all on-site consumption areas have to be in a standalone building, even if they're only going to do edibles. And so sort of fixing that to not have that limitation if a retail store is only going to do on-site consumption of edibles. So I think there's some cleanup work that could be done. Do you want me to stop or just go through them all?
I don't just go through them.
Okay. It is sort of a new look at labeling. This is one of those situations where I'm kind of like some other ones that are on this agenda where, now that the program's been up and running for 2.5 years, we've learned a lot, and it's kind of time to take, in my opinion, another look at the packaging and labeling issue. I think the way it's actually set out in the regulation is a little confusing, and the fact that both Mylar bags and paper are now considered packaging is also very confusing. And this would also be an opportunity for the board to clarify, who can create pre-rolls, who can create vape pen cartridges, and that sort of thing. In addition, our colleagues in Washington, Oregon, and Colorado did a lot of work on sort of best practices for packaging and labeling for the board. So at least look at those and see if there's things that you would like to adopt.
Yeah, could we get a short presentation on what they're doing? Just to
Sure.
maybe let them do it for you. Tell them we'd appreciate a couple of 3 pages. That they could each put that together and you can present to us at the next meeting. Sure. Thanks.
The third one is just some more clarification in the transportation regulations. The way they're written, while they accommodate like clones, they don't accommodate moving larger plants, which we know has happened. And then that would also be an opportunity to address when backflow is appropriate, because right now, it's not really allowed, but I'm giving the authority to allow it in certain circumstances, and I think some clarity would be beneficial in that for that topic. Number 4, another little bit of a cleanup project. Right now, the only reason for revoking a handler permit is for a violation of the regulations, but the regulations don't say and don't need to say that it's illegal to steal, but stealing should be and has been a reason for revoking a handler permit. So I think that just making that a little more broad will give the board a better basis for your actions. At the last meeting, we discussed retesting and how right now there's no allowance for retesting if marijuana or marijuana product passes testing, but we did talk about reasons why a retest may be needed in those situations. So some clarification on that issue would be beneficial. And then that whole issue with the location-based advertising wording, I think needs fixing, and some advertising issues were identified yesterday that may also need some cleanup. So I think that sort of, as much as nobody really likes working on that topic, as opening another project to do some work on the advertising regulations would be helpful.
All right, very good. Hey, just for edification, the advertising committee that we had, has that been formalized much, or is that kind of ad hoc?
I don't think it was really formalized. I think the committee was Erica and myself. I'm not sure anyone else was involved in that.
Okay, well, I'm going to let me designate you as kind of the chair of the advertising committee, and feel free to invite participation from a few folks. I mean, James or somebody from enforcement, Erica, and a couple of people from the industry, probably from cultivating and the retail, just to get an idea what they want, and just kind of see what you can work out.
Will do.
Great. All right. On the transportation one, and we'll jump into the director in a second. On the transportation one, I spoke to the chairman of the ABC board yesterday on the issue of how it would work to have a cannabis event on licensed alcohol premises. And I said, well, yeah, probably would be consumption, but maybe somebody want to have a little trade show, and they might want to, a cultivator might want to bring some plants. So when we're talking about transportation, let's keep in mind that some of the reason for transportation would be for display, which is not our regulations anyway. But we want to make sure that we're able to facilitate that sort of activity for cultivators, or for really for anybody else, for a manufacturer to be able to bring closed samples of what they're making, and not be in matrix and stuff. All right. Any other any comments on the report here, Mr. Chair? Yeah, go ahead.
To the chair, Director McCall. I remember we had a discussion about potentially looking at some language for an event permit to go along with the on-site consumption regulations. Have you guys addressed that at all, or had any comment on that from industry or other states, anything?
Through the chair, Mr. Emmett, the event permit was one of the board's legislative requests. I don't think the board has the authority to create that permit yourself in regulation. So you had asked the legislature to create an event permit that would allow consumption at events. And my understanding is that there is a legislator who has been working on that, but I have not seen a draft bill.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I remember the discussion loosely, but so it would be something the legislature would have to create another license type for us to be able to roll into our regulations.
A permit is different from a license, but it's essentially the same thing, yeah, that the legislature has the authority. Because I think way back at the beginning, before I was here, there was talk about could the board create a on-site consumption license, and the answer was no, the board doesn't have the authority to create a new license. It's sort of the same thing with a permit. So I think the proposal that the board asked for wasn't a new license type, but a permit, which is a event-based type of thing.
Okay, so the amendment to the current legislation that would allow us to create.
Well, they would create it, and then you guys would implement it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anything else for the director before we to regulations themselves? CNA, so let's go to tab 17, fine schedule.
Mr. Chair, do we want to address any of these recommendations? So, what interesting?
You're absolutely right. These are next.
Yeah, good. Okay, yeah. Does anyone else have a comment? No. Okay, definitely. Hey, Mr. Chair, motion to open a regulations project to address additional changes relating to on-site consumption.
Yeah, there's a second. Moved by Mr. Evans, second by Mr. Miller.
And to touch on our conversation that we had yesterday, I think that although what we have is a base model for on-site consumption is good, it can definitely be expanded to accommodate small governments. Discussion we had yesterday, and a lot of the comments that we got from the public health community was that they weren't so much opposed to on-site consumption, but to smoke. And so I think this would give people more latitude, so to speak, whether their community wants on-site consumption to include smoking or to not. I think we should encompass as much in the on-site regulations as we're legally allowed.
Did we get any comments on that? Okay, then I was in favor of opening a regulations project on on-site consumption. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, there's one for you.
All right, Mr. Chair, I would like to open a regulations project titled Packaging and Labeling.
There's a second. Seconded. And what would you like to package and label?
So we've addressed how marijuana is packaged, whether joints are considered packaging, whether that's the same or different than Mylar bags. And again, I think it would be good to just see what other states are doing. Take a look at where our regulations lie and see if we're using best practices. I don't think there's a whole lot of changes needed, but it's definitely something we should look at.
Yeah, and I would a whole lot of work get put into developing, new regulations, so we've had a chance to see and you've had a chance to see what other places are doing, and we'll get some input from the local industry as well. Yeah, I was in favor of opening a packaging and labeling project. Signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
The opposed? It passes. I wouldn't mind having just tightening up the handler permit revocation, and we can put in there that there will be public notice of revocation, and just say that any violation. We might even toy with the idea of allowing at least consideration of revocation at the request, at the petition of a licensee.
And Mr. Chair, is that a regulations project? Yeah, okay. I would motion that.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moving seconded. Any other discussion? Not hearing any others in favor of opening a revocation handler permit regulation project. Signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to open a regulations project titled Transportation.
Yeah, there's a second.
Second.
And there's a second.
So this one I think is actually really important for the larger businesses in the state. and the businesses that may have relationships with other businesses that are very far away. Transportation has become a bit of an issue. We have hubbing issues. We have situations where the marijuana laws are somewhat in conflict with the national transportation laws of how long you can have a driver on the road, where that person can stay when they need to sleep. And so I think it would be good to address the regulations and try to maybe find some ways to make it easier to facilitate commerce. I've heard a lot of talk of potentially bringing back broker licenses, or someone, even if we didn't bring back a broker license, being able to have one of our license types be used like a hub. You could say someone got a cultivator or a retail, but it was actually just used to house marijuana overnight. It was used as a crew quarters, that sort of thing, because having people on the road for 14, 18 hours at a time to comply with the regulations is actually a threat to public safety in itself, because you've got tired drivers on the road. And so I think that because of the risk to public safety that we currently have, the tired drivers, and the necessity for backflow at times, that this could be a really solid regulations project. I see some nods over there from enforcement, so I feel pretty good about this one.
Okay, yeah, good. I think that would be a good one, and hopefully we'll get some significant input from the transportation industry on that as well. So is there a second to open a transportation project? Second. Okay, any other discussion on that? All those in favor of opening a transportation regulations project, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None heard. What do we have left? Advertising and retesting.
Mr. Chair, I motion to open a regulations project titled retesting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, move second.
I noticed we didn't get any comments on this, but I know this is something that's popular with growers. I myself am not a grower, and so I've been kind of on the fence as to whether there's a need for retest or not, but it keeps coming up over and over, and so I think we should at least hear them out in a regulations project.
Okay, any other discussion on that one? And all those in favor of opening a retesting regulations project, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, which leads us to advertising, which we should probably keep plugging in. Mr. Chairman, yes, sir.
Motion to open a regulations project titled advertising, and have the regulations project be handled by an advertising committee.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Did we need much? Okay, all those in favor of opening advertising regulation project, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. There you go. Work cut out for you. Does the alcohol board give you lots of regulations projects?
They are not as interested in regulations projects as the marijuana board itself.
I don't know if that's good. Yeah, I can hear it now. Regulated like alcohol. Yeah, no, don't say that. Okay. All right, very good. So jumping right ahead into the regulations that we have in front of us. All right. First one is the fine schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board expressed a desire to develop a fine schedule in the spring of last year, and a first draft was brought to the board in August, and the board referred that draft to a subcommittee consisting of Mr. Jones and Mr. Ankerfeld. The subcommittee did recommend some changes, and I have to apologize to Mr. Jones. I think I was supposed to bring the proposed changes back to Mr. Jones and Mr. Ankerfeld, and I didn't do that. Okay. So what I have done in this regulation is show you through tracked changes what has changed in the version that you saw in August. And I will just briefly walk through that. And so again, the sort of the general concept is that a violation comes with a fine or comes with certain consequences, and if you are a repeat violator, the consequences get worse. And there are a few things that sort of build up over the life of the license, but most types of violations we're looking at within a 3-year window. And so after 3 years, it kind of resets. So we clarified on page 2 that the citation has to be delivered, if you like this, has to be delivered to the licensee either by email or by delivery to their licensed premises. And the board has established email as the method of communication with licensees. The first table that starts at the bottom of page 2 and goes on to the top of page 3, which contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things, are the types of violations that build up over the life of the license. So, in marijuana from a non-licensee, selling to a non-licensed, except not county customers, selling to minors, consumption on licensed premises, sale of untested marijuana, allowing a minor on premises, and refusal to allow inspection. And then the next table, which goes from the bottom of page 3 all the way through page 8, are violations that within a 3-year window, if you violate them more times, there's more consequences. There had been a question that if you transfer a license without approval, who would be fined? And so we proposed that both the transfer and the transferee would be fined. There was a question of if an employee fails to display their marijuana handler permit or ID badge, who gets fined. I put in here that it's the licensee who gets fined because it's really the responsibility of the licensee to comply with the regulations. And if it's an employee who wants to kind of screw with them and take off their badge and get them in trouble, well, they should probably fire that employee. On page 5, we added unapproved operations, and this is to comply with one of the regulations projects that becomes effective tomorrow, or actually today. There's a number of regulations projects becoming effective today. Basically, that you have to comply with the approved operating plan. On page 6, added compliance with the trade show regulations. On page 7, added consumption endorsement requirements and odor issues. And at the request of the subcommittee, separated unauthorized production methods from manufactured products, and clarified or added then operating with a suspended license. In the later sections, tried to make clear, so in the current regulation, if the board can't suspend a license without accusation. And so I've added language to clarify that if it's through this table, if it's, you have a second violation in a 3-year window of not doing required laboratory testing, and that comes with a 30-day suspension. Unless you appeal that citation, you have to do that suspension, and the board doesn't have to do that through an accusation. Added the words endorsement under 810 regarding suspension or revocation of license or endorsement, just trying to address some of the issues Mr. Jones had raised in the discussion of the on-site consumption about the board's authority to remove the endorsement, the on-site consumption endorsement, if there's any issues. And Mr. Ankerfeld had requested a change on page 12 that basically says if the enforcement officers have to seize product but store them through the appeal process, that storage would be at the expense of the licensee. So this project hasn't gone out for public comment, so the board today can do a number of different things. You can put it out for public comment as written, you can amend it and put it out for public comment, you can ask the staff to make additional revisions and bring it back to you, or you can close the project without action.
Okay, so this does remove our ability to slap the leader harder. We had put out some pretty hefty fines.
Mr. Chair, no, it does not. This is a guideline, and if you'll notice the lead-in language, the table says may, so it's all discretionary. You can always go harder, but again, you need to have a reason for that.
Sure. Yeah, and I think we always have explained our reason. Have we had instances where people have transferred licenses before they've been transferred?
Yes.
And we didn't take action on that, did we? Or did we?
The issue that the board dealt with at the last meeting with ISG, there were these two licenses in Juneau, and we made them revert back. And
okay, so that wasn't particularly nefarious. Yeah, I don't have any problem with sending this out by the way it is. You know, some of them first offenses, some of these first offenses maybe should be a little stiffer, but you know, I don't have any problem sending it out.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The Director McCall, I got a question about on page, I believe it's page 3 here, where it says sale to a minor, the first violation being a 30-day suspension. How does that compare to alcohol?
I don't know off the top of my head, and I didn't bring my alcohol book with me, but I think we can actually file criminal charges in that situation for sale of alcohol to a minor. But the disciplinary alcohol and marijuana are a little bit different. The alcohol board is more constrained than the marijuana board in terms of what you can do.
Gotcha. So yeah, my only concern with this, and again, I want to preface this by saying that I don't think it's appropriate to sell marijuana to minors, but I know that many bars have been hit with this. If they've got a bartender who is not on their game that day, and they sell to a secret shopper who is 19 or 20, you don't see that bar close down for a month. And I think, and again, Nick, I don't want to speak for the retail, but a 30-day suspension on the first violation, that might be the same as revoking someone's license. If they don't have enough revenue to survive a month without operation, they might just go out of business. So is that the intent here?
Well, and I agree. There's a couple of violations or suspension items in here that are very concerning. Even some of the monetary fines are very concerning. To close someone's door in this market for 30 days, it's closed. They're not probably going to get back open, to be quite honest with you. And I understand the business is responsible, but so is that person who did it. And, you know, they will be dealt with, but we all have that bad employee, and we watch them, and we try to train them, or we move them out for a one-time mistake. That seems very harsh. Along with some of the other fines, you know, if we decide to put this out for public comment, I will be reviewing it in depth as well. And but it is, some of these are very concerning. Like I said, some of them could be the end of a business for one mistake.
Yeah, sure. So I would motion to put this out for public comment. and I think just with the people who are listening, with the intent that we would get some robust public comment on this, because there are some things here that I really like, and there are a few that I think, regardless of how they're worded, would result in shuttering a business on the first offense. And I wouldn't want to see someone who's overall a good actor be closed down because they had a disgruntled employee, or just a low performance employee. That's my motion.
Is there a second? To send out public comment.
I would second to send it out for public comment, and would like to also say that folks need to comment. Look at this and put your information back in.
And just for clarification, for example, the suspension, it already exists. That's not an amended. That's already on the books.
No, that was in the first draft. Yeah, and all of this is new.
All right.
That was just in the first draft that you saw.
Okay, I gotcha. Okay, so it's all right. Okay, so any other discussion on sending this out for comments? Hearing any, all those in favor of sending, what do we call this one? Fine schedule. It would be an amendment to DAC 306805. For comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's going out for public comment. Which brings us to denial of license.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked the board to open this project because when you deny a license and I go and write a letter to the licensee and tell them why you denied the license, it appears that sometimes there are reasons that are not clear enough, and now that the board has had experience, it seemed time to take a second look at the reasons for denial. And this, just want to be clear, the intent of this project has not been to provide new reasons for the board to deny a license, but rather to better document the experiences that you've had in the past 2.5 years. So these are amendments to 306080. And so in A2, you can deny a license if it would violate any restriction in 306010, which is the separation distance, but the residency requirement is in 015, so we added that. Down in A5, you have denied licenses based on people's actions before they were licensed. So there was a situation where an applicant brought in a large number of plants to his premises before he was licensed. There was a situation where the applicant had been involved in illegal marijuana activity at the premises of the proposed license, where you denied that. So added in that in A5. A7 added that you'll deny if you find that a local governing body protest is not arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable. In B, which is, and those are, A is about denying a new license. In B, denying a renewal, added the protest issue, and added if the licensee has lost their right to possession of the licensed premises, and removed the license has been revoked for any cause, because why would you even be looking at a renewal if the license has been revoked? So that didn't make any sense. And then in C, which is about a transfer, added the protest language, and in E, which is about license conversion, also added the protest language, and the board finds that the applicant's actions or their application demonstrate that they won't comply. So I would recommend that you put this out for public comment, but you are also free to amend it if you see fit, or kill it.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, I would move that we put this out for public comment, but I would also, in my motion, ask that the staff include endorsements on here, since we now have that onto
an application. It's not a license. It's a type. So I think that needs to get added in. There could be a case where we might renew a retail license, but remove the endorsement on a renewal because of behavior or actions or whatever. And there may be some in the future that will come in for a new retail and endorsement at exactly the same time. And so I think that needs to be worked into here.
Second.
Okay, very good. So have you had to read our minds very often in writing letters to some denied applicants?
Occasionally.
Okay, we haven't had any appeals on denial, so I'm thinking of the applicant who lived in a northern city that will remain nameless, who wanted to have a limited cultivation in her residence, and we just had a variety of issues from privacy concerns to just anything you think of. Where would that have fallen in this set of regulations? I mean, I guess, and maybe this question is partly for Ms. Mills. As a board, and I think the way the statute is written, don't we have some latitude in approving a license that we can exercise, that doesn't skew entirely to the regulations as they're written?
Yes, you do. That's the public interest angle.
Yeah.
So you can deny a license if you find it's not in the public. If I recall, that was one of the issues that was raised with respect to that application, because it was a residence operation, and it was a small residence, and so the answer to your question is yes. Based on public interest, you can deny any application.
Okay, and that's it here. All right, any other discussion on setting this up? Okay, we have a motion to send out for public comment Amendment to JAC 306-080 denial application. All those in favor of sending out public comment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Don't hear any. So this one's out the door. Brings us to handler courses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board initiated this project in October, and the intent was to clarify requirements for handler courses. So the project proposes to the handler permit course information is sort of mashed into the handler permit section in a couple of different places. So it pulls it out of 306-700 and creates a new 306-701 that is specific to handler courses themselves. And it says basically that the board approves them, the topics are the same, that course provider has to update the course with any applicable changes to ASF 1738 and the regulations within 10 days of the effective change, and have to notify a change to an approved course to the board within 3 days of the change. The board, then the language about the board looking at it every 3 years is the same. The course provider has to provide continuous access to the course to the board and the director for the purposes of reviewing the course materials at any time, and it adds a $500 fee for a new handler course or the 3-year review to address the board's time, or should you ever delegate this to the staff, so the time that it takes to work on these.
Okay, very good. And before we have a motion, I will say I don't think anybody has a conflict of interest on this issue. So their motion, Mr. Chair, I would motion put motion to put the regulations project handler courses out for public comment. Is there a second? Second. Okay, is there any discussion? Right, then the motion is to amend 3AC 306-700 and to add a new 701 section. all those in favor of sending this out for public comment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None heard, so that's gone. Which brings us to a review of public comments for some of the stuff we've talked about.
So, Mr. Chair, this next one relates to the proposal to allow out-of-state investment in testing facilities. We put this project out for public comment in the late summer, and when the board talked about this in the October meeting, there were issues and concerns that were raised, and Mr. Jones had volunteered to work on some language and bring it back to the board. So I've provided Mr. Jones' language, which I will let him speak to, and then also the comments that were submitted on the draft that was put out for comment. Should you, like Mr. Jones' draft, you'll need to put it out for comments again.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. So it's hard to tell, but I think it's on page 2 of the memo. It says Lauren Jones draft 1, and it's basically F2. What I have added in here, which will require the staff to gather that information as part of the application for, I guess, a transfer. And it said the board shall consider, but is not limited to, the following factors when determining whether the non-resident involvement enhances marijuana testing in the state. Commitment to invest equity, expertise in testing, expertise in developing standards for testing, expertise in maintaining quality control, and provision of the state-of-the-art equipment for testing. What I was trying to do in October was to acknowledge that if there were out-of-state investment in testing, it should add some value to us. It should allow our testing to become better, have less variation, maybe be more state-of-the-art. And so if a company that was in testing in Washington or Colorado or Oregon or all three, wanted to try to get into the market in Alaska, this would allow them to do that, but showing that how this would improve the testing process, improve the technical assistance, and improve the results for the industry. So it took me a while to try to figure out how to do that, and so I spent a lot of time talking to a couple of people, and this was the suggestions that they came back with based on my sort of ramblings. And so I do think that we should put this out for comment to see if this would help. I don't know how much testing we have. I know we haven't done a new application in probably a year. We've got a couple that maybe have come on, changed their operation a little bit, but I think we're still down, 3, maybe 4. So I'm hoping that if we're going to take the risk and allow some outside investment at a certain level, we get to.
Great, yeah, that's a good job there, Lauren. Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, then all those in favor, we need a motion. We need a motion.
We need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion. Thank you.
I would move that we put the regulation out-of-state investment testing facilities back up for public comment.
Second. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. To send amendments to 380C through 6015 up for public comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's done. Which brings us up to sample jars.
Mr. Chair, this change, so the current regulations talk about how a cultivator has to provide a sample to a retailer, but it was, so that sort of initiated the board to look at how a retailer could show a sample to a consumer. And so this proposed change states that if a retail store is marijuana to a consumer for the purposes of selling it shall be in a sample jar that is protected by plastic, metal, or other protective mesh. The jar must remain in the monitored custody of the store during the consumer inspection. And it clarifies that when the cultivation facility is providing a sample to the retail store, it changes customers, which was sort of a confusing term, to clarify that it was the retail store that they are talking about. There are some comments, a couple of comments that were provided, which are attached to the packet. Thank you.
Okay, a motion on this one? What we talk about?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would move that we vote to.
A second. Second. Okay, I think this kind of came about because I went into 2 retail establishments in some city that has poorly plowed sidewalks. Mm-hmm. And one, their sample jars were wired to the wall, and they had screens on them, and they're really nice. And the other one I went into, I'm like, if I was a magician, I'd be stealing buds out of this jar that was left on the counter and just had a top on it. So I think that whenever a retailer is letting a customer look at what they got, they got to be careful about it. This brings to mind, though, that we did have an NOV regarding the contents of sample jars, and I wonder, maybe not in this one, but at some point, should we have some clarification on that probably sample jar contents, when they get a little stale, should be immediately considered waste. I mean, it beats the heck out of somebody saying, well, yeah, employee, you can take what's in their home with you. I mean, we had that come up, and in all likelihood, it'll happen again. So it's just something to think about. But that maybe that's down the line. Okay, so we have a motion to send out sample jar regulation as written.
No, to adopt.
To adopt. To adopt it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So all those in favor of adopting 3AC 306.325 as amended and 306.450 as amended. Since an adoption, let's do a roll call. Mr. Jones?
Yep.
Mr. Yes. Right? Yes. And yes. So that is approved. Adopted. Okay. Handler permit renewal fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This just clarifies that when you're renewing your handler permit after 3 years, the same $50 fee applies as when you get a brand new one.
Okay. Motion? To adopt. Motion to adopt. Second. Okay. Moved and seconded by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Oh, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry. Your voice sounds different today, Lauren. Must be that walking in the rain from Douglas. All right. Okay. All those in favor of adopting the change to 3AC 306.100E, the amendment. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, and then we get to follow the approved operating plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I spoke earlier and said that this was becoming effective today, but sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the regulations projects. So this is a new section that just clarifies that you have to do what you told the board you were going to do and that the board said it was okay to do. And while clearly it's the intent of the whole program, it never really said so very, very right out there in the regs, so we just clarified that.
All right, very good. Is there a motion to adopt 3AC 306.703? Motion to adopt. Is there a second? Second. That was Mr. Miller. I say it. All right. Any discussion? Motion to adopt. Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Miller. Yes. Right. Yes. And a yes. That's adopted. regulation in a minute. Okay, inspection parameters.
Mr. Chair, this regulation came out of a situation that the board dealt with where the question of whether the licensee was operating properly related to their dumpster. Their dumpster is, of course, outside the licensed premises, and so there were claims that the board had no authority to look in the dumpster because it was outside the licensed premises. So the purpose of this regulation is to clarify that the board's authority covers all aspects of a licensee's operation. There are a number of comments which I encourage you to review, and whether you want to adopt it.
I got a question on this. Where it says that a local fire protection agency or a state agency can be asked to do an inspection. Should we amend it to put local agency also? I mean, I'm thinking of the municipality of Anchorage, maybe CBJ. We do have some large municipalities that do have those health powers, and it seems like we would kind of, and in fact, we're talking about dumpsters, this would almost prevent enforcement from calling the municipality of Anchorage, code enforcers to say, hey, go look at that dumpster. Does that make sense? And would that be a substantial change, Ms. Mills?
That makes sense to me, and I don't believe it would be a substantial change.
Okay, then when we get a motion to adopt, the chair would entertain an amendment to A, where it says, actually we just strike the word state. Would that work? Any other agency with health and safety responsibilities?
Yes, that works.
Okay.
And in fact, Mr. Chair, I would use the word authority, agency or authority.
Yes. Health and safety authority. Or agency authority or I see what you're saying. Any other authority with health and safety responsibilities.
Right, and I can work with the director to get the language to make
sure. And I just want to make sure we're including local governments.
Conceptually, Mr. Chair, it makes sense.
Okay. Let's take a minute to look at some of these comments.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Not sure I quite understand why you think that's necessary. Given a local government has either adopted the state in the case of restaurant inspections or not, and fire marshal, whether they're local or state, certainly has the right to, in fact, a requirement under like our conditional use permit, they have to marijuana business or any other business that has a conditional use permit has to maintain the rules around fire inspections. When we protest sometimes alcohol license renewals, the fire department goes in and looks, and sprinklers aren't working, so we protest the reissuance of the license. So I'm not exactly sure why you want to change something that's already there. Granted, it may be the director to make the request, but all of these particular agencies that you're talking about here, under their own authority today, have the right to go into a business and do that without having to be requested by the director. So I'm not quite sure why that clarifying, if it is clarifying or more confusing language, but I don't know that I would necessarily support changing that.
I guess part of it is, if the way you look at it, let's say it's in Bethel, and the AMCO enforcement gets a report that there's a bunch of green leafy matter around the dumpster out in front of the cultivator in Bethel. So enforcement, it says, well, they can call fire issue any other state agency with health and safety responsibilities. The troopers are going to say, well, that's downtown Bethel, it's not our jurisdiction. So just all this says is it just gives a little more leeway for
for the director to work with all agencies instead of it's saying state agency. If it continues to say this, and the Bethel PD goes out to look at somebody's dumpster because there's sort of green leafy matter around it, the licensee might say they don't have the authority to look around here. That's all I'm saying. It's not so much the health inspection side. It's the interagency side. And just by pulling the word state out of there, it just means that any authorized agency can assist us.
Mr. Chairman, I think that puts a lot of onus on the director to determine if and what agency you're talking about, and do they in fact have that authority. I mean, if you're talking about a state agency, it's pretty easy for the director to find out if they have the authority. But if you're talking about the director trying to figure out who in Bethel has authority over what, that puts a lot of onus on us. Maybe the police department can do that. I realize that a couple of the comments in here talked about the police don't have the right to inspect my property without a warrant. But oftentimes officers are certainly allowed to see something, and if they feel that it warrants further and they need a warrant, they know how to get one, they know how to go to court to get one, and they know how to come back with that particular warrant. So I'm just not sure.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's okay. I mean, we don't even have a motion to adopt, with or without an amendment anyway. So,
Mr. Chair,
sure.
If I may just to let you know how the Department of Law would read this, just for some perspective. Really, the sentence is about a discretionary function on the part of the board of directors. They can reach out to whoever the local authority is, who has authority over whatever's going on, and it really follows a number of other provisions in the regulations that involve local communities. So it really is not so much about what the local authorities, what obligations they have on their own. We all assume that they're going to discharge their duties under whatever their authority is. It's not about them. It's about just making sure that licensees and the public know this regulation, that the board and the director may reach out to them for a little additional help for a requirement. And again, it has really nothing to do with the discharge of their duties under their own terms.
Alrighty then. So do we have a motion on 725A?
Yeah, motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
All right. Is there any other discussion?
I looked at the public comments, and I kind of do agree that the language of all business operations seems to be a little broad. I do know that we've had some problems in the past with dumpsters and things like that are used daily, and they're putting waste in and things like that. But there are some other comments in here that talk about other things that are stored, records. Who knows where people are putting their cash and things like that. I can't support it as written, but if we wanted to take it back and tighten up the language a little bit to make it more specific on what operations we're talking about inspecting, I can support that. But as it's written now, I can't support it.
Mr. Chair. Okay. Just in response, I mean, we require and will require the businesses to operate on their operating plan. And if they say they're going to maintain all their records off the licensed premises, they're going to maintain all of their paid backups off premises. I think we have the right to verify that, in fact, they're doing that they're not just saying, I don't have any records here and they're all in my backup spot, but you can't go to my backup spot to see if I actually have it there. I think that, within reason, I think we would have the ability to go, yeah, I'd like to see where you're keeping the records. I'd like to see where that backup is. Especially if then you go in and you ask them for the tape from X day because you've had a complaint and they can't produce it. Well, then you'd want to go check to see what kind of the equipment and where they're keeping the backup. So, and we've had this where they've had shared offices. So it may be a retail, if they're sharing an office with a cultivation that's a block or two away. You should be able to go look at that in the cultivation place, even though you're inspecting the retail, because that's where they told us in the operating plan they were going to be keeping their records. So, but I agree with Mr. Miller. I think that we have to have some faith that we're not, charging out looking in your storage unit for your financial records and where you're keeping your cash in the safe. But you look at the operating plan, a lot of them say, here's the safe. Here's where I'm keeping stuff. Here's where I have my video. And if it's on premises, that's great. We can inspect that. But if it's off premises, they also have the right to go look at that.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, looking at the comments here, it seems that we've got some, they're strongly opposed. We've got, one that is strongly for, and I think the difference is in how these companies are viewing enforcement and how they're going to be looking at the businesses. And from my perspective, I'm inclined to agree with Great Northern Cannabis here, because the way we operate our business, everything is as like a normal business as we can. I can understand the concerns of these other licensees who may not have everything centralized. And so to Mr. Miller, if I were to withdraw my motion, do you have anything specific that you think that we should look at, or anything that we could amend in here in lieu of adoption? Just from my perspective as written, I think it's good, but I don't want to speak for all licensees. If there are things in here in other people's business plans that I might be overlooking somehow. I don't have, I guess, any specific language, but I would like it to be more specific. Mr. Jones mentioned that, a lot of businesses show where their safes are and where they keep their cash. But at what point does that cash not become the business's? It becomes someone else's, and then they can take it, right, wherever they want. And, if we want the ability to look at these things like storage of records, then they should be very specific and say storage of records, things like that. Leaving it very open-ended. Someone put a comment in here that, they have a lot of supplies that are essential to run. But, you buy 3 cases of something, you take what you need to the store because most are very small, and, who knows where the other 2.5 cases are. They could be sitting in your garage. They could be sitting in your living room. Does that mean that, it's essential to running my business? Is my living room now subject to inspection? So, I would just, as it's written, I can't support it. I would support pulling it back and maybe adding more specific line items that we want to go and inspect. But as it's written now, I just feel it's too broad.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, good.
I think we've had at least one, maybe 2, in the past where on inspection we've come back with NOVs where they have been storing marijuana products outside the licensed premises. I think in one case it was in the basement. And on their premises diagram it says the basement is not part of the licensed premise, but on inspection the product was found there. And I think I'm more worried about marijuana product. I'm not worried about cash or necessarily business records unless they can't produce them. If they've had some issues where people have not been able to produce the tape. They've had gaps. They've not been able to produce the business records to match the metric. So I think some of that's concern. I certainly agree with you that, we don't want to have carte blanche to be able to walk into somebody's living room, but, if you ask and, most of this product you're talking about that's stored in your living room wouldn't be a marijuana product. It might be essential to the business in the sense of, it's the fertilizer, it's something else. But I think, I share some of your concern. I'm willing to support this, but if we run into problems, I'm also willing to come back and put some limits on it if we have to.
And I would say that if someone was storing marijuana, I don't remember the incident in their basement, it was discovered through the metric system when they were doing the inspection of the facility, not that they were inspecting the basement. They looked into the inventory system and said, where's this pound of weed, right? Oh, well, it's not in the facility because they've inspected it. Here's where it is. That's how that was discovered, not because they were just off inspecting other areas. So I think we have mechanisms in place to catch that. I think we have mechanisms in place to catch the bad actors. And, for someone who's operating a business and they're all above board, they won't have anything to worry about. I think we should just give carte blanche inspection for everything. So.
Yeah, let me put Ms. Milks to work here for a second. So the amendment basically is, that seems to have people concerned, is, and the location of other elements of business operations, which precedes the existing language, which reads, including any marijuana product on the premises, equipment used in cultivating, processing, testing, or storing marijuana establishments, marijuana tracking system, business records, comma, and then we add waste and waste disposal areas. Now, at least one of the comments said, well, gee whiz, here's a list of essential elements of my business operation that I keep it stored, some that I don't. We're not looking for where they are storing their extra toilet paper. We're not looking for where they're storing their extra handout cards, their line cards, so to speak. We're talking about, it wouldn't, the term location of other elements of business operations, is that pretty clear in terms of, interpretation by the state?
I think the Department of Law would look at that as not including toilets or janitorial supplies, but the things that are relevant to the operation of the business, meaning business records and products. But certainly, if you want to make that more clear, you could say business records and products. I think intuitively, it would be a stretch to say something, for example, janitorial supplies and things like that would, parking lot, things like that would be business operations. Of course, anything could be a business operation, but I think it's clear enough that what's being contemplated here is elements that relate directly to the operation of the licensed business, and that would be business records, products, things like that.
And that already exists in the regulation. So let me ask you this. Would taking out and the location of other elements of business operations, but retaining waste and waste disposal areas, would that constitute a substantive change to this regulation?
Yes.
It would. Okay. So I'm kind of mixed feelings here. This really emerged because of the dumpster issue down in Anchorage. And, the elements of business operation that we have jurisdiction over are marijuana and marijuana products on the premises and the equipment that's used in cultivating, processing, testing, or storing marijuana and the marijuana inventory tracking system, because all of those are components of an application that we approve. So I don't really know whether the term location of inspecting the location of other elements of business operations, with the exception of off-site electronic storage, but that's part of the application also. We've had applications where they just say it's going to be stored off-site. They don't even say where. You know, some people say, I would say that that enforcement would have probable cause to go to licensee Jones and say, show us your off-site storage. You know, where do you have it? How easy or hard is it for you to get at in response to our request? But I wouldn't necessarily lose a lot of sleep out of taking out and the location of other elements of business operations, because that does seem to broaden our jurisdiction certainly more than licensees would like to be broadened, and maybe more than we would want to broaden it without a little bit more specificity. But you know, Miss Mills has said that if that was to be stricken, it would be a substantive change. But personally, I could probably support a substantive change that would require this to go back out to public comment.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I'm going to make a new motion, and that motion would be to send this draft back to staff for revisions with some input from Mr. Miller.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? I don't see that this is a real, emergent issue, and I'd like to hear a little bit more. Maybe we can hear from enforcement why they think that this sort of language is necessary, and maybe can chime in either in between or during the next meeting when we talk with this as to how closely we want to interpret the location of other elements of business operations. Okay, so let's just do a roll call to send this back to staff. Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Brevet?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so we'll send this back to for further review.
Mr. Chair, can we take a break?
Yes, we may. So we'll take, I'll come back at 10:30. Give me a chance to walk dry this rain up.
You don't want to go back outside?
I don't know. Is it quit raining? The sun out? What's the weather forecast, Lauren?
Rain.
What are they do with that? I don't know what it's about. I don't even know what jurisdiction it's for.
Sorry, fellas. I got a bit early this morning. How you doing, buddy? Arrived. I will. Project.
Sure.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end. Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please. Thank you. Please stand by. If you are the chairperson, press the star key now. Your conference will begin when the chairperson arrives. Please wait. You will now be placed into conference. There are 21 participants in the conference.
Sure, my phone is
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Open it up that it's going on. Dial in or listen in. You read by listening in on the phone. Some of the things I wouldn't want other people to know. They just told everybody. Right. Yesterday there was nobody. Today it was like.
What?
Yesterday I went in and wandered around the museum a little bit. There's nobody there saying, okay. Then I went in and the lady sitting at the counter, and I started to walk in. She goes, "Oh, are you coming? Are you returning?" Or well, there was an admission. That'll be worth Okay, so what did we do here? We went and sent this back.
Yep. After revision to the process back to you guys. Before you start, give me a warning so I can put them up.
Yeah. Let Grant show up.
Roll back in.
Yeah.
You need the second copy.
There we go. All right, just go here. Okay. All right. Just for time's sake, we'll get back on the record here. Okay, this is Airline Control Board. We are back from our break. And doesn't look like the weather got any better, huh? Anybody go outside to smoke? No. I didn't get as wet as you did. Yeah, you were standing in the roof or something. No, I wasn't. I had to get 20 feet from the door. Yeah. You got 20 feet from the building? Keeps reminding me. All right, so we're back on the record. We're still on regulations, and we just sent the inspection parameters regulations back. Project tracking and grading. Say grading. What? Do you know? Maybe not. Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm not going to get the funds for that.
Little salt, I'll take.
So you don't track the snow and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was part two of the testing working group had put forward a number of regulations changes, and they kind of got split into two different projects. And the first project did get adopted and effective, and so this was sort of the follow-up project. And excuse me. So in an attempt to increase confidence in testing accuracy, the board recommended and the board agreed to increase the amount and quantity of samples. The chart that we talked about yesterday is how many grams you have to submit depending on the size of your harvest. There's some, because these all didn't go forward together, there have been some challenges, which again you heard about yesterday. And so the second batch would address some of those challenges and was put out for comment, but based on the comments that were received, there were numerous substantive comments from the public. The staff recommends that you don't adopt this project at this time, but that you send it back to the testing working group for additional work, with the exception of two definitions in 990, because it just doesn't provide the clarity that we were hoping for, and it does have actually a significant financial burden that I think needs to be more closely examined. So that's a very short overview. I'm going to ask Mr. Emmett if he has any comments to make about this, because he's been on the testing working group. But ultimately the staff doesn't recommend adopting it, with the exception of the changes at 990B, 43, and 44, which address the definitions of total THC and total CBD.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I could support that. This could definitely go out more work. We had tried to address some of the issues surrounding seeds and inventory tracking, but I don't think we had been able to encompass everything. I do agree, though, that the definitions for total THC and total CBD and how they are listed in packaging and labeling are pretty straightforward, and those should indeed be adopted.
Okay, make a motion.
Yeah, I would motion to. How did you word that? Frank McCollum?
To the Chair, Mr. Emmett, if you can move to adopt the changes at 990B, 43, and 44 to amend the definitions of, I think, add definitions for total THC and total CBD, and then send the remainder of the proposals back to the staff and the testing working group for additional review.
Motion.
There's a second. Second. All right, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
And I don't think this will slow the process too terribly much. If we do move it back, there's still a lot of work that the testing group needs to do. We're still waiting on the recommendations packet from the state-sponsored labs. I think they're getting pretty close to that, but we should be able to roll out some more encompassing regulations in the next couple meetings.
Okay, so just to clarify it, at least under 990, all we're not adopting mature bud, immature bud, remainder of the plant. It's total THC and total CBD.
That's correct.
All right. Yeah, good.
I just had a question. So the first part of the regulation that we did adopt, we were trying to get it better aligned with the new tax structure. Did we accomplish that, or is there more work that needs to be done here as well?
That's true. Ms. Merrill, that's part of the issue because the tax division has different definitions than we have in here. And so if we were to adopt this, we would create a conflict, and ultimately the Department of Revenue trumps the Department of Commerce. So we could say this is our standard, but then the licensees are going to be held to the standard of the tax division in these work.
Okay, any other discussion? You are going to stay on the testing committee, right?
I do intend to stay on the testing committee.
Good job. All right, so we're to vote on adopting 990B, 43, and 44, and sending everything else back. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Strauss?
Yes.
Yes, so that's that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
While we're on here, and I appreciate Mr. Emmett wanting to stay on the testing committee, and I think that's really good. I still think we should have some board representation on that.
That's fair enough. Anybody live in town?
I will do it. I do have a retail and a cultivation, so hopefully I can figure out how the textbook do.
Yep. Point very well taken, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Okay, moving on to license fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board opened this regulations project in October, and public comments were accepted for over 30 days and are attached. This project would increase the license fee at the time of renewal, so it would not increase the fee for the new license, but that once you are established, it would increase the license fee at renewal. So license renewal fees that are currently $1,000, which would be testing facilities, limited cultivation facilities, and concentrate-only manufacturing facilities, would be increased from $1,000 to $2,000. And license fees that are currently $5,000, which would be retail stores, standard cultivation facilities, and product manufacturing facilities, would go up to $7,000. Part of the reason for this is that the legislature is expecting that the marijuana industry repay the $4.6 million in general funds that were provided to AMCO between FY15 and FY19 in order to initiate the program. I have to tell you, from a budgeting perspective, it's been very, very challenging to anticipate what the marijuana revenues are going to be, just because it's a new industry. We don't know sort of what the when it's going to level out to have a sort of a consistent number of licenses that maintain themselves. On the alcohol side, because the licenses are capped by population, the number of licenses, and of course it's a much older industry, the number of licenses has been very steady over the number of years, so it's been easy to sort of predict what the revenues are going to be. But because I think it'll be probably at least 5 years before sort of the industry stabilizes at a level of meeting the supply of consumers, the supply and the demand, I'm sorry, not the supply of consumers, the demand of consumers, that it's been very difficult to predict our current licensing fees meeting the requirements of to support the system. And since we will no longer be getting any general fund support starting in FY20, we need to ensure that the program is self-supporting. I would say that, as a couple of years go by, once the legislature goes back and we make sure that the program is self-supporting, I think it would be good for the board to then, again, reevaluate, and maybe can be lowered in the future. But I think this is important to meet the expectations that are set by the legislature and ensure that the program is supporting the office.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we've got some, actually not a whole lot of public comment in favor of the license fee increases. I don't know how come concentrate only license fees are so low.
I think when that site was created, I think the board felt that the concentrate only manufacturer is going to be like the limited grow of concentrates. That's turned out to not be the case. But again, those of us that are larger all got product manufacturing licenses to start with. So that's definitely something that we could look at. So I do have a disclosure here. I have a public Facebook, and I've got flooded with comments and questions about this, and so maybe you can't forget things that you've read. But taken, I'm not allowed to take those into consideration, but everything that people flooded my inbox with is consistent with what we read here in the public comments that we're allowed to use. And it seems that the consensus is that the small growers feel that they're being disproportionately impacted. They're the ones who are having the toughest time right now, and they don't feel that the percentage increase is equitable. They're getting a 100% increase, where the larger cultivators are only getting a 40% increase. I do think it's unfortunate that an industry that's generated so much tax revenue is considered to be broke and owing the government money. It's a bit disingenuous, in my opinion. But that said, I think that we should address that here, and that we shouldn't impact the small cultivators disproportionately. And I'm kind of on the fence as to whether we say, okay, we're going to reduce the fees for the small cultivators, or we just say we're going to increase the fees for the large cultivators. I've heard it, both ways. When we were starting this product, some people said, I'd be willing to pay $10,000 a year if I knew that my applications for my new grow or my new products were ever going to get processed faster. And then I've heard people say, oh, this is absolutely horrible. We're on we're against the ropes and we're going to go down. And so we're in a really tight spot because we need to fund the office. also have an industry that a lot of the businesses are, they're struggling to make payroll. I hear that all the time. Like I probably get asked for loans, once or twice a month. Say, hey, can you front me concentrates, or can you loan me money so I can make payroll? They're not trying to buy a new jet. They're trying to keep their people employed, and so I'm really struggling with this one because we have to keep the office going. We're not going to get any more money from the legislature, but I don't want to strangle those individuals who are already struggling. So maybe hear from the rest of the board what their thoughts are, and that might help me make a decision.
I'd kind of like to ask the director, given the number of licenses we have now, if this was to pass today and say it went into effect today, what would the revenue impact on the office be?
Through the chair, I provided that information. I think it was let me see if I can find it in the previous.
Yeah, that's at the last paper.
That in December.
Maybe.
Yeah, she provided us, if I'm not sure, the director provided us with a chart that showed how much revenue we could generate under multiple different schemes. Yeah. This one was like the third most expensive for the licensees. Basically, it didn't maximize the revenue according to the chart, but it generated more than a couple other schemes did. Yeah, so was it somewhere in the ballpark of 4.5 or 5 million, Director?
I'm almost there. So I think that it was going to increase by actually 600,000.
Increase by what would be the total?
So the total, and so these are numbers based from October. So again, things have changed. Some licenses have gone away. Some have been rated. So I think it brought our total up to slightly over $2 million.
I was way off. Okay, $2 million.
And do we split renewal fees with local governments?
The application fee, not the levy.
The application fee. Okay. Any?
So, yeah, I kind of like this to go back out for public comment. I'd like to hear from the larger growers. We don't really see them in the comments. I don't know if they haven't commented, so they don't mind, or they just didn't take a look at this. But we know how the smaller growers feel. They don't like this at all. And I'd really like to get some public comments from the big grows to hear, do they think that they can actually take some more of the burden here? And again, I thought about this a lot, and I really struggling with the decision here. I don't think people are going to be happy either way we go on this, because we're going to be asking people for more money, and they're going to be left with the situation with feeling, hey, we're paying all these taxes, but we don't get credit for those. So, yeah. So I would motion to put this out for public comment for another 30 days.
That's your motion. That's my motion. For a second.
I would second that.
Okay. Any discussion on sending out for another 30 days?
I did have one request of the director, not that she needs more work, but maybe we get that table and set back out so we can better make a decision.
Be happy to do that. I think the goal might be to have this take effect as a fiscal year, so there's definitely some months to go.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think that's my problem with going back out for public comment is that our next meeting is in May. If we adopt them, they don't take effect till 30 days after a lieutenant governor were to sign them. And renewal process begins toward the end of June. July 1. I'm not sure there's logistically enough time for that to take place to get those all in place for the renewal process. I think once we start the renewal process, I don't think we can change the fee in the middle. You know, somebody who applies June 20th would have a $5,000 renewal fee, and somebody who applied in September, if these were adopted, would have $7,000. I don't think we can do that. But I think you miss the entire extra revenue in July. Now, we could have a special meeting at the end of the 30 days and adopt, you know, just to deal with just that regulation. But if you want this to take effect and people know for their renewal that they're that's coming up in July, and our next meeting is not till the 1st of May. I think setting it back will put us in a bind for the revenue, and at least in budget, despite how absolutely abhorrent it is for most state agencies and local governments, they have put in the budget what we requested, and I think probably in that request, revenue was there. And you don't want to cut it short because there's not going to be any other revenue. We're either going to get it from the industry or something's not going to get done. So I would rather, and if we want to deal with, you know, make a couple of changes, I think we can make changes without it going back out, but I'm not sure. But, you know, the cultivation, you know, you get cut by 500 or the others and deal with some of that inequity that way if you wanted to. I don't know that I would, you know, increase to 8,000 the standard growers, you know, make up so that the difference was higher, but I just don't think we could make that deadline.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Just to address one of the concerns that Mr. Jones brought up, the idea that you need to go back out for public comment if there's a substantive change is really to protect licensees and prospective licensees from something that would take away from it. So if you decided, for example, to reduce the fee for limited cultivation, that would not have to go back out again for public comment because it wouldn't work a prejudice to anyone. If you want to increase the general cultivator fees, that would have to go back out again. Just a thought.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
yes.
Given that if you wanted to amend these fees now to get more public comment, then you could reduce them later, but you couldn't later increase them without then doing another round of public comment.
Right. I think Mr. Jones's concern is twofold, and maybe you can respond. One of them is that our budget's revenue projections inclusive of the fee increase.
I would have to go back and do some analysis before I can answer that question.
Okay, and of course the other part of it is timing. Our renewal period starts before the fiscal year changes, so we don't. You know, if we delayed this, this wouldn't go into effect until 2020.
I mean, the board should state when you want it into effect. I can imagine the situation, and perhaps Ms. Mills will say, no, this isn't how it ought to be done. But if you said this takes effect July 1st, 2019, then people who got their renewal in timely would pay the old fee, but people who got their renewal in late would pay the new fee. I don't know.
Can we do that?
You can do that. That would have to be part of the regulation.
Otherwise, you could indicate that this entire change takes effect for the period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just Ms. Milk. So if we amended this to say, instead of it being $2,000 for the small growers, if we did a 40% increase on them, so it was $1,400 for the small growers and still $7,000 for the larger growers, that wouldn't have to go back out for public comment. Is that
That's my
it's lower than the proposed $2,000?
Right, because it wouldn't act to the detriment of anyone. So that's my opinion. Yes.
Okay. Okay, and so guys, just know that if we do this, the department is going to be more strapped. It'll be more fair. Everyone will be at 40%, but we're still going to be running into these budget issues. So just know that. Okay, so I would withdraw that motion. I would make a new motion that increases the fees on small cultivators from $1,000 to $1,400, which would make a 40% increase. Would be consistent with the 40% increase that is going to be applied to the standard cultivators.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any comment on the new motion? Mr. Jones, wait a second.
No, sorry.
All right. So this is to adopt with the change to the small cultivator.
Correct.
All right. Okay. This will vote. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Bennett?
Yes.
And yes. So there you go. Okay, moves us on to protest by local government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This regulations project basically divides the concept of a protest into two different categories. What we call a conditional protest, meaning that the local government protests because there is some local requirement that has not yet been fulfilled but is expected to be fulfilled in a reasonable period of time. And then what we would call a non-conditional protest, which would be some sort of permanent barrier to licensure, like they're in a zoning district that doesn't allow this. And it would allow conditional protests to be sort of wrapped into the delegation so that the board could approve an application that has a conditional protest with delegation, and we just wait for the protest to be lifted and can issue the license. The board doesn't have to deny it. There doesn't have to be an abeyance period. It doesn't have to come back to the board if it's approved, and then later on we get a conditional protest. It really makes the whole process more workable for everybody, I think, both the board and the applicants. It does require that the local government make a determination about what is conditional and what is not. And our local government specialist, Jen Smith, would be working with the local governments to, give them guidance. But ultimately, the determination would be on them. Is this, is the issue that is before the local government something that can be resolved or not? I have to confess, the board asked us to put this out for 60 days, and we missed that. We only put it out for 30 days. But we did send specific send a specific email to all of our local government contacts regarding this particular regulations project. Mr. Smith fielded multiple phone calls on the project, and we did get one comment from the Massachusetts Borough, which is in your packet. They have requested reasonable period of time, but I think that's I would say that that's not really necessary. Certainly, if we've been bringing back applications to the board that have been sitting out there for a year or two without beginning to operate. And so if there is a conditional protest as part of the delegation and they're in delegated status for a year or two, they'll come back to the board and we'll communicate with the local government about what the issue is.
Yeah, and we've given a lot of abeyance to licensees for this very purpose.
Right. And so this way, you wouldn't need to do that anymore. That it doesn't put that sort of artificial timeline on because you're required to deny the license because
right. But what I'm saying is we have
we have basically, given all due consideration to the local governments.
Yes. So, again, I apologize that we didn't put it out for 60 days. We dismissed that. But if you like, we can put it out for another 30 days. But
I only see one municipal comment.
I would just recommend adopting it.
Okay, is there a motion on
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Question for the attorney. I think, should we add endorsement in here? We have marijuana licenses, we have renewal of licenses, license conversion, and including endorsement, delay this, or is that one that we could approve in concept as we adopt these?
Well, it's a close call. I think since municipality has, they do have the right to weigh in on endorsements, I think conceptually it's not a substance change. That's a close call. The safer thing would be to put it out again, but I'm not sure that, I can't say specifically that it would be infirm if you didn't put it out again and you added that language.
Mr. Chair, then I guess I will take a risk since law can weigh in that we amend this in the appropriate manner to include endorsements, and that with those changes, we vote to adopt this regulation.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so that would be.
And that way, I guess,
somewhere
we forward it up, and the Department of Law regulation says, no, got to go back out. Well, then we have our orders.
Sure. I think that Ms. Milks is right that it would be a close call, but I think we'd probably be okay because it's a classification of action that we're permitted to take. That an endorsement is, and it'll be a lot easier to just try to do it now than to put it out again with one, for one word and a comma or two commas. So, okay, but all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, so the amendment's in there. And get a motion for the whole send out, right? Or to adopt.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then adoption, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Yes. I'm a yes. So it's adopted with an amendment, subject to the extremely close scrutiny and consideration, which is a fancy way of saying win. Over the law. I'm just kidding. I'm not win at all. That's the first word that popped in my head. Okay, moving right along to University of Licensee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board opened this project in October of 2018, and public comments for over 30 days that are attached. The change would allow a public or private university whose main campus is in Alaska to apply to become a licensee, except not a retail licensee. At the last discussion the board had about this, there were questions about separation distances, whether the board would want a university to be able to testing license and some other type of license, which is currently prohibited. So I would recommend that the board review the comments, clarify your intent, and ask us to bring it back to you.
Mr. Chairman, my opinion on this is that if the university had both a testing and a cultivation license, that the cultivation license would be used exclusively for research. Again, a university is generally held to a very high standard, and so although it might not be their intent, we wouldn't want to create a situation where the university has this big grow where they can do genetic editing and stuff like that, and a testing lab, and basically be able to compete with the other licenses. But I think
if they are operating a testing lab and they're operating a grow and they're using that grow for advancing the knowledge of cannabis horticulture, that should be allowed. But there should be some sort of a distinction there that the university can't have a for-profit grow and a for-profit lab. They would have to either say we're going to just do research, or we're going to have one of these for-profit or the other one, but not both. And I don't have any specific language for that. But I think maybe staff and the future board could encompass that.
Yeah, and actually, I think, and this was kind of my idea. Maybe what we should do is, instead of saying the university can have a license to cultivate and test, maybe we should say that the university is exempt from licensure by us if they engage in cultivation for educational and research purposes. And since testing, if we give them a license to test, then they may put together a world-class 5 PhD staffed testing lab and run a business competing with all the other labs.
Not with the governor's budget.
No, not with the governor's budget. No, we're on 360 North.
Mr. Chair, before you go further down that line, I don't think you have the authority to exempt anyone from the requirements in the statute.
Okay,
You
all right.
have broad authority to regulate marijuana for the whole state. So.
All right, thank you. But I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. But the idea is, when I came up with this, it was to allow the university to engage in education and R&D. Brandon and I were talking at breakfast this morning. One of the things that the university, the School of Agriculture, I think has been good at is studying pests. And as we see more and more, climatological regime shift going on, we're going to see different kinds of bugs showing up and more pests. And people are going to want to be able to say, "What is this?" and be able to hear from somebody locally. So I think you're absolutely correct, Ms. Milks. I think we should look at it as an exemption thing. But I don't, we don't want the university to be competing. We want the university to be doing work that's helpful to the Alaskan industry, whether it's developing testing regimens or whether it's developing new strains. So I don't have any objection to sending this back to the staff to let them work on it a little bit more. We don't have any comments from the university.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think the other thing for consideration and reason for the licenses is, we just went through a process. We got a report on the amount of new strains being introduced to licensed cultivation from an unlicensed source. If the university does with agricultural products and other things like that, they put out certain bug-resistant potatoes and they do those kind of things. If we want the university to then turn over those seeds that have been, changed a lot, then we need to have them as part of the tracking system. And I would think the university would end up wasting a lot in, failed attempts, but we would want some kind of tracking part of that. And I think the other significant issue that we have, although maybe not in Alaska, given that I think the average age of the student at UAS is 26, but a lot of that kind of work was done by undergraduates, and they're all under 21.
Yeah.
So it's not always the graduate students that are, doing the work. The work-study program could be out doing the irrigation, but we wouldn't allow them on there if they're 18 or 19. The 22, 24 student could go out there, but they'd be disdained to go out and water the plants necessarily. So I think it needs a lot more consideration, a lot more negotiation with the university. They're going to be looking for some angel dollars, and I doubt this will provide them with that. But I do think we have a lot more work to consider, given, the university status and the amount of persons at a university that are under 21.
Sure. I would agree with Mr. Jones. The University of Alaska just created its very first cannabis chemistry course, and so they are just now getting into the weeds, so to speak, on whether or not this is a program that they would support. And so I don't think we're in a great hurry to accomplish this. I know for a fact that there are researchers at UAF that are very interested in this, but the administration hasn't taken a position on it. So I think we've got the time to really hammer this down to when the university is ready, the federal government is ready to say, hey, university, you can use your funds for this, that we've got something that's in concrete shape.
Yeah, and I know at least one of the regions has my phone number. So, okay, so the motion, is there a motion to send it back?
I'll move that we send back to staff for rework, and if need any board involvement, I can volunteer to be part of that work.
You guys know my phone number too.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, what I'm hearing is send it back, focus on research and development, but allow multiple licenses, maybe contact or communicate with some of the university branches to get their input, and with relatively low priority.
That's what I would say you heard, yes.
There's a second. Second. Okay, all those in favor of sending this back to the staff with those caveats, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Last but not least, fingerprints for individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. This regulation project is intended to clarify that when an individual is part of multiple entities that are holding different licenses, but is submitting their applications generally at the same time or within a year, that we only need one set of fingerprints from that individual.
Okay, is there a motion? To adopt. Yeah, motion to adopt. Okay, and a second? Second. Okay, moved and second. Any discussion? We've had that.
Sure.
Yes.
The legislature changed some rules against our recommendation, but if the ownership of a business doesn't change at all, then we don't need to collect a different set of fingerprints except every 5 years. Is that correct?
To the Chair, Mr. Jones, through the renewal process, we only need to collect new fingerprints every 5 years.
Right. So if I were applying for a renewal, and at the same time, and I didn't have to fill out the fingerprints, and at the same time I put in a new application, then you would collect the fingerprints from that new application, even though I just gave you one a year ago. Now I've got to transfer them. I understand what we're trying to do here, and I understand that, if somebody were applying, we've got a couple we're going to deal with here where there's transfers of 3 businesses, or there's 3 separate businesses, they're all coming in at the same time. I understand that, but if somebody came in for a renewal and a new application in the same month, well, we collect the fingerprints of the new one, but we wouldn't have to on the transfer. Aren't we sort of going against what we're trying to do here?
To the Chair, Mr. Jones, the project keeps renewals very separate from new applications and transfers and ownership changes. And so it doesn't solve every problem. So yes, if there was an applicant for a new license at the same time that they were renewing an existing license and they were different licensees, then yes, we would end up getting fingerprints twice. The number of times it's going to happen is probably pretty infrequent. So we felt this took good steps forward to fix a problem, but it certainly doesn't fix every single potential problem out there.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to get that, that were to happen. There could be, one or two people might be affected. Well, with that, I would move that we vote to adopt as written.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Got it?
Yes.
Yes, so that's passed. All right. Good. Take care of the regulations. Let me just, before we move on to handler cards, we still, let's make this up to tab 30, although we skipped a couple. We still got a big agenda in front of us. If anybody here is a manufacturing applicant or they represent a manufacturing applicant, we have a couple that are real backbreakers. They're like that thick. So 2 things, when you come up here, please tell us right off the bat how many items you are asking for us to approve, and think about if you can live a couple of meetings without all of your products being approved, give that some thought, because they're not all as necessarily cut and dry, especially if you get an edible that's got a recipe. Those can take us a few minutes. So just a little food for thought for when we get to those. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to have a lot of trouble with a lot of this. So let's move on to handler course applications, MHCP03. Actually, before you do either one of them, you had some comment about one of these, Treasurer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our so we don't normally review these, but one of our staff members with sharp eyes noticed that this application at MHCP 030 was essentially the exact same course as one that had been adopted by the board in 2016. And that is a current course run by a different person. I wanted the board to be able to evaluate that. I have provided the original course that I believe is 003. I have provided it on your computer for comparison.
Okay, thank you. So, last marijuana handler certification 101, Philip Major, are you here? Mr. Major, we're going to turn
the conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Philip Major, catch can. Are you online? Hello, Philip Major. Last marijuana handler certification 101. You up there? Okay, I guess not. So, one more minute. Philip Major, are you online? Okay.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Yes, sir.
I would move that the board deny the application from Philip Major for the marijuana handlers course, and that the stated reason is that it is identical to one that has already been approved, and there was no indication that that he had any authority or permission to use that exact application, and that for that reason the board is denying the application.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and I guess that was your discussion, Mr. Jones?
It was.
Okay, I would concur with it.
Yes, sure. Has there been any follow-up from the original marijuana handlers course provider or from Mr. Major about the circumstances surrounding having an identical course? Any communication with them?
Through the chair, Mr. Emmett, no, I have not heard from either individual.
Okay. Well, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Jones. We haven't heard from Philip Major, and not having enough information, I would hate to grant someone a course where they had copied someone else's. I know these courses take a lot of work. If this second course isn't being endorsed by the author of the first one, then I think we should err on the side of caution here and deny the application.
Very good. Mr. Miller, any of that?
No, I agree.
Okay, all right, then we'll just vote. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
I'm a yes, and so that application is denied, which brings us to Alaska Marijuana Handler Certification Course E-Strategy Solutions, Johnny White. Is Johnny White in the room?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, this is Marijuana Control Board. We're looking for Johnny White.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. Johnny White, right here.
Okay, good morning. Now you go ahead and introduce yourself to us and tell us what you got in mind.
I'm sorry?
So why don't you introduce yourself to us and tell us what you're planning on doing here with your course. We have it in front of us, but go ahead and give us the elevator talk.
My name is Johnny White. I work with E-Strategy Solutions in Austin, Texas. Actually, E-Strategy is our parent company. My state training, our e-learning company, primarily focused on cyberspace. Mandated cannabis training space, and this is our attempt.
Okay, so you said you're doing these sort of courses in other states?
We are in other states in the cannabis space, and we have combined experience in the e-learning space of about 25 years.
Okay, and what do you e-learning? What do they do besides marijuana handling courses? Do other licensing courses?
We're in the food and beverage space, and our parent company actually works directly with state government and professional boards for licensing type courses, licensing and certification courses, jurisprudence exams, things of that nature.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we're getting the better part of that.
My apologies.
Yeah, if you could place your mouse closer to your phone so that you come through louder and clearer, and then this is a reminder to everyone else that is on the phones, we absolutely need you to mute your phones, because if there are any unmuted phones, it makes it very difficult for us to hear the applicants, and it's going to slow this process down.
I took you off speaker. Is that better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, my apologies.
That's all right. So, you're how many states? You're doing marijuana courses in a couple of other states, you said?
We are currently building one for Colorado. And we will build them anywhere a training mandate is put in place.
Okay, and as far as quality control goes, how often are you in-house going to be reviewing this course against our, regulations development?
To be humble, more than anybody else that you're going to be working with. So, for example, the new regulations that went into effect today, we've already updated the content for our course in the places where it needed to be updated based on those changes.
Okay.
So we'll keep, and we understand, especially in the space being a new industry, that the rules and regs have a tendency to change much more rapidly than even we're used to in other industries. So we will keep a constant watch on what's coming out of the board and what's happening with rules and regs changes. And regardless of whether or not the 10-day turnaround for course updates goes into effect, we will be updating courses within that time frame.
Okay, great. Any other questions from any board members? Okay, do we have a motion for MHCPO 31?
Mr. Chair, I have a motion to approve MHCPO 31 Alaska Marijuana Handler Certificate Course by Solutions, Inc.
Is there a second? Mr. Miller, okay. Yes, all right, any other discussion?
I just like to, say, Mr. White, I think this is a really good course. I like the workbook style identification checklist. You've got multiple different licenses from different states. Part of the exam is actually looking at these licenses and making a decision whether you sell that person or not sell that person. He talks about the different questions that you would ask, and so I think anyone that takes this course would actually have a really robust understanding of how to or not to sell to someone based on their age and their identification. So,
wonderful.
Good job,
thank you for the feedback.
Any other comments? Okay, we're ready to vote. Mr. Jones? Yep. Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes, so there you go. Congratulations.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, excellent. Which brings us to previous board action taken.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
On license 14956, 50 Shades of Green, we have been notified by the City of Houston that they have lifted their protest. However, the requirement from the fire marshal is still pending, so they would still need extendance of the advance.
Okay, is 50 Shades of Green represent?
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Dan Alstein for 50 Shades of Gray or Green.
Remember, we're on really the door.
Just getting my feet wet here in this meeting.
Really? Well, welcome.
And yeah, so we would still appreciate the advance.
How long do you figure it's going to take the fire marshal? 60 days? 30 days?
I would just go with what the executive director already has here in her memo of April 1st.
Okay. There we go.
Yes, a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor of,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So we denied the license and we did a 120-day abeyance. So if they're done on February 28th, then would that have been back to the board, to us to approve since we denied? And the reason I ask is if the abeyance is only till April 1st and our next meeting's not till May, so this isn't really a delegated status at this point. What is the status? Fire marshal gets done 3 days from now. Do they have to wait till May, or have we delegated you to be able to refute the denial?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, the way it has been working is the board, there's a protest, the board upholds the protest and denies the license with an abeyance period, and if the protest is listed during the abeyance period, then it's considered to be in delegated approved status, assuming there are other things that need to be resolved, so for instance the fire marshal, and then as soon as the fire marshal gives their approval, then they're considered, we issue the license. So it does not come back to the board.
Okay, I was hoping that was the case, otherwise April 1st seemed like a weird date. Yeah. Other than it's April Fool's Day, too.
Oh, yeah. Which brings me to a dumb question. Should we at some point consider writing a regulation that describes the abeyance process and the denial with delegation? Should we think about maybe putting that in there sometime?
We're getting rid of that through the one you just
Oh, yeah. I'm good with this. All right, so all those in favor then, I guess, of the director's recommendation to extend the abeyance period to April 1st, 2019, 450 Shades of Green, 14956. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I motioned that. I believe it was second.
Okay, all right. And all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Arctic Bakery LLC, you with them too?
Yes. Dale Beans for Arctic Bakery LLC. The same types of issues here as the certificate of occupancy is still being worked on, and then fire inspection and approval.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll need to rescind your prior approval of delegation, uphold the protest, and deny the application with, this says 90 days, but whatever you decide is the correct abeyance period.
Okay, whoever wants to take on that tongue twister.
I'll make the motion as stated by the director.
Second. Okay, the motion is to rescind our prior approval of license 16006 with delegation and uphold the protest of the city of Fairbanks with a 90-day abeyance, waiting for a certificate of occupancy and fire marshal inspection. So, all those in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, take care of that. Pardon me, Kind and Company.
Dale Beans for Kind Company. The applicant has applied for a variance, and the hearing for the variance is March 14th. So we hope to have this resolved on that date. So I would just concur with the director's memo to grant the abeyance period.
Okay, thanks. And so we need a motion to rescind prior approval of the delegation, uphold the protest, and deny the application with a 90-day abeyance. Is there a motion? So moved. So moved by Mr. Jones, seconded by Mr. Emmett. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, takes care of Kind Company.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Alaska Frosted Flowers, are they here? Okay, Alaska Frosted Flowers.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Alaska
Yes,
Frosted
sir,
Flowers.
this is Mike with Frosted Flowers.
Okay, good morning.
And you have Mr. Wells on behalf of Mr. Musbach.
Okay, good morning to both of you. All right, so this is conditional use permit. Any update on conditional use permit?
At this point in time, the Mat-Su Borough application has been approved. He is set for a meeting before the Mat-Su Borough in the next couple of weeks at this time.
Okay, so 90 days.
90 days, we should be fine.
All right, very good. Then we'll look for a motion to rescind prior approval on license 17952 with delegation and uphold the protest and that is consistent in the borough due to lack of conditional use permit and with a 90-day advance. So motion with denial with 90-day advance. Okay, is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
Fairbanks Cut.
Thank you.
The Fairbanks Cut on the line.
Hello, this is Lily Bossart for the Fairbanks Cut.
Hey, good morning, Ms. Bossart.
Morning.
So let me get the page there. You have the fire inspection or certificate of occupancy yet?
No, sir. We've met with the Fairbanks Borough and the city. We've gotten approvals from them. We're currently working on construction, and we will be getting hopefully inspected within the next 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, so 90 days on review then.
Perfect.
Okay, then we'll look for a motion to rescind prior approval of license 18187 Fairbanks LLC retail with delegation, uphold the protest of the city of Fairbanks for fire inspection and certificate of occupancy, and deny the application with 90-day advance.
So motion.
There's a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Bell.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day.
You bet. Petrichor LLC. Okay, Petrichor, you on the line?
Yes, this is Anderson Petrichor LLC.
Okay.
Recuse myself.
All right, Mr. Emmett has requested to recuse himself, and we won't even ask him why. Okay, so this is how you come to the Fairbanks.
We're close. Sir, we have all the assembly approvals. We're just a couple inspections out for certificate of occupancy, a couple weeks, probably.
Okay. Then we'll look for a motion to rescind prior approval of license 18493 Petrichor LLC product manufacturing facility. Did you do that deliberately? Make that rhyme like that? I'm asking the app. Okay, and to uphold the protest with 90-day advance. Is there a motion?
So motion.
Moved by Mr. Miller. A second? Second. Second by Mr. Jones. And Mr. Emmett is recused. So all those in favor say aye. 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 Are there any opposed? So that passes 3-0, and so you're all set there for 90 days.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the servant to rejoin the meeting.
Okay, good. All right, state of mind. Oh, okay, now it's tabled matters. Okay, state of mind cannabis.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
so at the last meeting, the board tabled this application because the proposed marijuana licensed premises overlapped with an existing alcohol licensed premises, and the board tabled it until they had revised their alcohol licensed premises. They have submitted the alcohol premises change forms, which are currently being reviewed by local government. So should the board wish to approve this application, I would ask that the delegation include the finalization.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
I was going to ask if State of Mind Cannabis was out there, but we don't have, I don't think we have any big issues with this. We'll listen to the squeak for a minute. State of Mind Cannabis.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
State of Mind Cannabis and Seward. Turn my microphone on. State of Mind Cannabis and Seward, you out there? Yeah, it's all right. We can do it anyway. Okay, do we have a motion to do what again? Madam Director?
Should you be interested in approving this application, then the delegation should include finalizing the change in alcohol licensed premises so that the two types of premises don't overlap.
Right, and their alcohol paperwork has been submitted.
Correct.
Okay, so is there a motion? Motion to approve with delegation for approval of alcohol paperwork that will keep the physically overlapping the alcohol. Is there a second? Second for discussion. Another for discussion.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, discuss away.
So we tabled this application, but I'm not sure we reviewed the entire application, did we?
May not have.
So
Yeah, let's bring it back in May.
that's what I believe is appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially because the licensee is not present.
Well, because we actually, Mr. Miller is right, we didn't go over the whole application.
You haven't reviewed it, and
Right.
you always review it with
Right.
the applicant.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So their motion, you move it to table?
Yeah, motion to table until the May meeting.
Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Yes, I think if Says the premises diagram that's in this application might be altered somewhat by whatever they're doing on the alcohol side. Make sure that that review's been done between the two. We get the correct premises diagram for the marijuana in relation to the other. I think that's important.
Okay, very good. So on the motion to table to May, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. That's tabled to May. All right, we'll get through a couple of these. We're moving on to licenses, pending inspection status for over 6 months. Okay, folks on the phone, we're going to be going through a number of online people, so please have respect for your fellows in the industry and keep your phones muted. We've got a bunch of them to go through, and we'd like to get through this as quickly as possible, with as little interference as possible. And if you're going to be talking to us, please don't do it on speaker unless you absolutely have to. If you got, your partners with you or something, talk close to the mic. So we will start looking for Alaska Cannabis Outfitters in Homer. You're not in the room. No, you're not. Okay, Alaska Cannabis Outfitters in Homer. Are you on?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Good morning, board members.
Alaska Cannabis Outfitters.
Good morning, board members. Alaskan Cannabis Outfitters.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked to us in June of 2018. How are things coming?
Well, sir, we probably need about another until the end. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
So go ahead.
We need about to the end of May. The building's up, the plumbing, electricity, and compliance issues are in progress. End of May, we will be ready for inspection.
Okay, very good. Well, hopefully we will hear that you got inspected when we have our meeting in July.
Very good. Was that it?
Stay in touch with the office. Yeah, we're just trying to find out where folks are at. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Burns Wicked Weed, Jeremy Erickson down in Sitka. Are you online? Jeremy Erickson in Sitka. Okay, I'll sign it in. Okay, 88 Double Happiness. What's that?
Identify those licenses that in this group that I think the board should take action on. And this was one of the ones that I identified. This license board is on September 7th. We're talking in the past years ago, and the license was actually issued shortly after that. So he's been intending to inspect the product for the half a year. They were all notified that they would be on the agenda and expected.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
They have to be open in 6 months. Yep. I would recommend that the board take action and revoke this license.
Yeah, and Ms. Mills, we can do that, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And I had spoken to the director. I said, we got something about it for a while. So, is there a motion on Burns Wicked Weed?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, I would motion to revoke the license number 10071, Burns Wicked Weed, due to lack of communication with the board and inability to bring their operation online within the time frame that they had stated.
Okay, there a second?
Sorry. Mr. Chair, if I could just
clarify
the terminology. You should be rescinding, not revoking, but rescinding, and I apologize, I used it wrongly, but rescinding your prior approval.
Yeah, excuse me. Rescinding.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I'll speak in favor of that. 2 years should be enough time. It's a standard cultivation, and they could have 500 square feet of canopy growing by now in the space they've got lined out. So And they haven't gotten back to us. Last time we talked to them was in January of 2018. So, any other discussion? Okay, then all those in favor of rescinding prior approval of license 10071, we'll do roll call on it. Vernon's Wicked Weed in Sitka. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
I'm a yes. So license 10071, prior approval has been rescinded, so that license is no longer in effect. Okay, getting back to maybe the phone lines, 88 Double Happiness in Anchorage.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
88 Double Happiness, you online? 88 Double Happiness in Anchorage. Okay, no sign. Record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another license that has been in pending inspection status for over 2 years. A year ago, the licensee told the board that he needed to move another business out of the premises. You had asked us to look at the lease. I did look at the lease that was provided with this application. The licensee owns the property and had leased to himself, but clearly he's also leasing to another business. Seems to me if he doesn't want to move that other business out, then the license, he doesn't need this license.
Was he the microgreens up? Yeah, okay. All right. And I will point out that just because of license, just because we rescind prior approval, that's really, I've never understood, is it with or without prejudice in legalese? They can come back and apply. This doesn't, we will not hold the fact that we rescinded the previous action against them if they come back to apply again. Please.
That's great.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to rescind prior approval on 88 Double Happiness license 1074. So motion. There's a second.
Second.
And again, the basis of this is longevity of the license without inspection or really any contact with the office. So, any other discussion? Oh, that's not reflected there. Okay, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Bennett?
Yes.
Yes. So that's we rescinded prior approval on that one. Pardon me. Moving right along, Popeye's Emporium.
General State Attorney for Popeye's Emporium. The mother of one of the licensees was older and she passed away, and she also owns the building. So it's going through probate right now, so it's going to take some changes to the lease and stuff, which once probate is completed, then I'll be able to update the lease, get it to the director. Both kind of waiting for the probate to play out.
Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, Director. I see your memo in here. So I apologize, Director. I see your memo in here on the three licenses. Okay, Southeast West Laboratories in the house on the line.
Here.
Okay, good morning. So your license was approved in October, issued in November 2016, and on January of 2018 you closed it 6 months. Where are you at?
Yes, we are currently looking at doing our final inspection by June 1st. We're waiting on a chemical hood to come up from Seattle that takes special orders.
Yay! Okay, we're talking to Southeast West Laboratories. If you're not,
Yo.
This
yes,
is
we're on the line.
Go ahead, Southeast Laboratories. Okay, so you're waiting for a chemical hood?
Yes, and it's supposed to be here by the end of March, and we've been doing a ton of validations, and everything is looking good to go, and we're hoping to do our final inspection by June 1st. That's going to be hinged on Sean Kasner's availability for final inspection.
Okay, any questions for Southeast West Laboratories? Otherwise, you got everything, got all your hardware, got all your equipment, you're ready to go, except for the hood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chair? Yes.
Are we still requiring testing programs to be reviewed by the outside review group? And if so, has this been done for this vendor, or is that part of the final inspection, or does that have to be done prior to final inspection?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, we do require that. That has not been done, and it will be done.
And can that be done without all the equipment here, since it's reviewing policies, procedures, reviewing technical qualifications, and should this person be scheduling that fairly soon?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, Bill, I think we are supposed to come right at the end and then so it'll, if she thinks that she'll be ready to go by June 1st, we should look at scheduling it for, late April.
I would suggest so that if she really is going to get up, that gets done.
Okay, do you catch that there?
Yes, understand that we'd like to make sure that our chemical hood is here prior to scheduling inspection, though, for obvious reasons.
Well, the inspection, but getting the certifications from, what's the name of that?
A2LA.
Yeah, A2LA.
Correct, and that's exactly something that we can't do without the chemical hood.
Okay, I got you. All right. Are you here in Juneau today?
Yes, sir. I was just tied up with a bunch of other things.
Yeah, it's kind of crappy outside anyway. All right, okay, thank you. We'll move along to the Green Room, Alaska, Ferguson of Smith Enterprises in Anchorage. Are you with us, Green Room? Green Room, AK? Okay, nothing heard from them. Might come back and talk about that. Okay, Tempt LLC, are you with us? Tempt LLC in Anchorage? Hello? Okay, no sign of Tempt. Yes, go ahead.
This is Jeremy here. I was from the prior one. It wouldn't let me speak.
Oh, from Green Room?
Yeah, from Burns Wicked Weed.
Oh, from Burns?
Yeah. It wasn't.
Okay.
60 days out.
Okay, so you're down to 6. Okay, hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth, so you have to learn how to trouble.
Okay, sorry, it's cut out here. I'm like 30 to 60 days out and done and ready.
Are you on your speakerphone?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, turn the speakerphone on. Good.
Is that better, sir?
That's much better. Okay, Jeremy, Mr. Erickson.
I'm sorry to budge in. I didn't, but I couldn't speak earlier. It wouldn't let me.
Yeah, all right. Well, okay, so what we did was we rescinded our prior approval of your license based on, you got your license in 2016. In January of 2018, you told us you planned to be open in 6 months. That would have been June of 2018.
Yes, sir.
We'll give you a fair hearing here for a couple minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some personal things and, financial with everybody, but we're so close right now. And, I mean, I'd like to see 30 days, but 60 is really the shift stuff, and it's plug and play.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm hesitant to go back on the rescinding of the license. So it's taken him forever. He says, "Oh, I think it'd be 30. I think it'd be 60." I just don't know if he's going to be able to pull this off. I mean, all these discussions we're having revolving around how tough of an industry it is, especially for the growers. And I mean, this licensee just hasn't demonstrated that he's able to get his act together. He says he's got personal problems, he's got money. I don't know if he can do it. I might be inclined to stick with my previous decision. Yeah.
I've also been working with other in the industry. It's not like.
Well, that isn't the issue here. The issue is
that, I know.
You've had the license now for almost 2.5 years. you know, a year ago you told us you'd be open in 6 months. You know, we just, I mean, I don't know how much you, I mean, standard cultivation, I'm, you know, guessing you have got to, you know, when we approved your plan, I didn't have it in front of me, but, you know what, I think we'll stick with this rescission. I mean, I would. And but
okay.
As I said earlier, it's not done with any prejudice. If you feel like you're able to resubmit an application, and we learned yesterday there's only 11 in the queue, so it's not like it's a long drag out process right now. So feel free, you know, to apply again.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So, all right. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Exxon. Appreciate your understanding.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
All right. Green Room AK, are you still not there? Okay, how about Temp LLC, Standard Cultivate in Anchorage? Temp LLC? Not there. Green Elephant in Anchorage. Juno.
Mr. Chair?
Green Elephant. Yes, go ahead.
When Temp LLC was on the agenda a year ago, they said Easter at that time, and I didn't get them on the next agenda, but with the board's willingness, may I indicate to them that if they're not at the next agenda, then the board will rescind their approval?
I think that's fair. I concur. Okay.
Hi.
Mr. Elephant.
Rich Dudis from Green Elephant.
Good morning.
Can you say that into the microphone
mic
again?
on.
Press the silver button first.
I'm Rich Dudis from Green Elephant.
Okay, so January you told us you thought you'd be in 2018. You said you'd be in the spring for inspection. July of 2018. What's going on?
We've been working on a lot of projects.
Press it. No, turn to red. There.
Yeah, your mic's red.
Okay.
Now leave it.
We've been working on the project. It just hasn't gone as fast as we hoped. We're still working on it. It's coming along quite well now. We're scheduled to have the security system and the camera system in by 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
And we'd like a little bit more time.
Okay, but otherwise everything else is good. Your permits and everything are all set. All right. Okay. Hopefully we'll hear that you're expected by maybe May. Thank you. All right. Thanks. Okay, DG2, all right, it's lunchtime, huh? What do you guys think? Everybody ready for lunch? Yeah. Okay, we will be back at 1 sharp, and we will...
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.